There's something really strange about the way that Republicans have usually responded to stuff like this. Simultaneously, the rest of the conservatives in the Republican Party have to be like, oh, no, you don't get it. He's just joking. And then Trump is consistently like, no, I'm not joking. Let's take a look at Donald Trump and a federal judge making arguments on presidential immunity that are, if I do say so myself, completely identical to the argument I made yesterday, and I'm no constitutional scholar. Here it is.
Because it's such a poignant moment that Judge Florence Pan asked of this very court. She had a litany of things, including selling military secrets, selling pardons, and ending with this huge hypothetical.
Instead of Matt Pat, can we talk about the equator state of emergency? Chatters, not Matt Pat. Look into the equator. It's a cartel takeover of the country. It's going on right now. So, chatters, what do you want me to do? Like, I need to learn more about what's going on before I can give you information on it. If there was breaking and developing news on Israel, well, that's in my wheelhouse. Okay? Situation here in Equator is Ecuador. Am I saying? See, I'm saying it wrong. I'm not even saying it right. It's Ecuador. I am ESL. Okay? It's just like, my point is, I can't cover everything. You're getting bullied, son. I know. Maybe a couple minutes with the Congo. Oh my God. Here it is. It's just very sad. I'm sorry. No, I mean, I'll look into it. I'll look into it and cover it later after I read a little bit about it. Okay? Feels like I'm living through hell. Yeah, I don't know enough. You can do the ethical journalist thing and read us a Wikipedia on stream about it. Yeah, I'll just read the Wikipedia page for Ecuador. All right, let's continue with the judge asking if a president can order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a rival. Hear Trump's lawyer's response. Now, one thing that's interesting about this is that, like I said, I made the exact same argument, okay? I made the exact same argument yesterday.
Hypothetical. Listen to this.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes.
I mean, we all, at that point, we all in the room kind of sat back for a second because, first of all, to make a concession of any kind, it's major. But when you hear that, trying to go through the hypotheticals, trying to follow that thread of common sense and logic, what struck you about that moment where he essentially has a qualified yes that a president could actually order an assassination, and if he's not impeached or convicted, immune?
I think he's really making the argument for Jack Smith. This is exactly what Jack Smith has been warning about, that are we a country of presidents or a country of kings? And I think what Trump's lawyer effectively argues is that we are.
Bro, I literally made the argument yesterday and you said it was insane and not realistic. Socialism equals theft. I'm a raging capitalist now. No, I made the argument as well about like the president can't call a hit directly. I simply stated that using that as an argument rather than in the public's eye, rather than the kingship, is silly. I used the argument of the president calling for an assassination. I literally said the president, well, not calling for an assassination. I said the president can't just simply during the State of the Union, can't just, take a gun out and kill someone, something along those lines. But as far as like presenting it in court, yes, I do think that this is ridiculous that this is even being discussed. None of this is a unique thought, of course. But the reality is that the fact that this is genuinely being deliberated on, okay? Genuinely being deliberated on. Oh, also, Chatter, you said, what if Trump did that? Okay? As in, like, Trump could potentially do that. If you pull the clip, you will realize I was responding to the likelihood of Trump doing that, not necessarily using it as an argument in court. You literally said, what if Trump becomes president and then turns around and actually, assassinates Democratic Party members? And I said the likelihood of that is low. However, I personally had also brought up how ridiculous it is that this argument would extend to Donald Trump being able to technically, in a State of the Union, execute someone with a gun and then turn around and say, well, this is technically within the presidential rights.
Are a country of kings, that the president can act.
And now it's a matter of record that, like, Trump's lawyers are unironically arguing that you can do that.
As he wants, as he chooses, whether it be violence. We had violence on January 6th, but he's saying the president can take it a lot further. The president himself can direct that violence openly, using official government resources, and that's fine. I think what it does, it establishes how dangerous this presidential immunity argument truly is. And to your point, Ellie, we could have had the original argument that spoke about the so-called outer perimeter, which saying, hey, I was just doing my job, and to protect me and to protect the institution, I should be given some coverage. The same way presidents get civil immunity. What they've done is say, let's go further. That the president, even when he effectively is not upholding and effectively executing the laws, in that scenario, he's still covered. When he's breaking the law, he's still covered. That no one gets to sit in judgment over a president. And I think that danger was seen by the court today.
Well, and there was skepticism, a lot of it, from which we expected, though, from the judges, but I think in a real way. I mean, Judge Henderson, who is the senior judge out of these three, the Republican, who was appointed by a Republican president, said at one point, I think it's paradoxical to say that his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed allows him to violate criminal law. But what Judge Pan also noted is that that is not the understanding that senators have, because when Trump was actually impeached and then it went to the Senate, a lot of them, including Senator Mitch McConnell, said this is something for the courts to take care of. This is something that he should be handled in a criminal prosecution.
There's something really strange about, like, the way that Republicans have usually responded to stuff like this, because on the one hand, Donald Trump is literally making the argument that, like, maybe as president he could murder people. Like, at least his lawyers are making that argument. While simultaneously the rest of the conservatives in the Republican Party have to be like, oh, no, you don't get it. He's just joking. And then Trump is consistently like, no, I'm not joking. It's very odd. It's kind of, it's not dissimilar to the way that, like, Israeli politicians in Hebrew will be like, I'm doing genocide. I love doing genocide. Palestinians are dogs who deserve genocide. And then, like, the defenders of Israel in the Western world have to turn around and be like, you guys, what do you mean genocide? Come on, they're not being serious. I don't take this as the international, court of justice. I mean, that would be ridiculous. I mean, if you do, I mean, come on, it's not really. It's like putting their defenders in a weird position over and over again. Yeah, kind of like how Kanye was on Alex Jones, where Kanye was like, openly saying insanely anti-Semitic things, and then Alex Jones was trying to stop him, to be like, oh, come on, you just mean like rich people, right? Like, you mean like, come on, you mean like the rulers of society? He's like, no, dog, I'm talking Jews. Like, come on, that's not how we, listen up, Kanye, we're not supposed to be saying stuff like that.
Or that could be handled in that way.
Yeah, it's a great point. There's obviously two very different talking points. The problem with the argument that Trump's lawyers just staked out, there has to be an impeachment and a conviction before there could be a prosecution, is it leads to absurd results that cannot be the way this works. We all know impeachment is entirely different. A judgment about whether to impeach could be political. It could be based on any number of factors. That is just a different ballgame altogether than a decision whether to prosecute and eventually convict somebody. And the thing I keep coming back to is they had an easier way. Trump's team had an easier way. They briefed a better way. They just made the traditional argument of what he's charged with doing here was within the scope, within the outer perimeter of his job as president. And if they stuck to that, I still think they probably would have had a losing argument, but they wouldn't have had a preposterous argument, and I think they would have had a stronger case to make.
Well, first of all, I mean, just think about this. What that would suggest, as long as I can hide my behavior long enough to be in office and avoid impeachment, I can get away with anything I want. All I have to do is not have transparency or eyes into what I'm doing, because the only way to have an impeachment is if, one, I know about your behavior, right? If the House is going to bring the impeachment articles, if then we'll actually have the actual moment to conduct an actual trial. So all I got to do, if I'm the President of the United States, is just bide my time. That's part of that argument. But there was a moment here, too, when the counsel, I think
it's pretty funny that they're talking about this as a hypothetical, but like that's kind of exactly what Donald Trump did do. Because Republicans every step of the way were like, impeachment? This is a political argument. Actually, why don't we leave it up to the courts, as a matter of fact? And then now that they're like, okay, well, we impeached you. We didn't convict you. You said you would leave it up to the courts. They're acting brand new. They're like, well, what do you mean it like that? Don't bring it up to the courts. The courts are fake and gay. And also, the courts notoriously hate Republicans, red-blooded patriots who were hot and shouldn't be punished in the courts. We were just kidding about the court thing. Actually, we hate the rule of law. It's also pretty much Watergate if Nixon didn't hire the most incompetent folks to do the operation and remembered he had voice-activated recording devices in the Oval Office. Yeah. It's so funny. Like, the Republicans collectively said, in an identical parallel that can be seen on January 6th that I covered briefly on January 6th, they went from, oh my God, I can't believe how, unruly this is. We have to do the rule of law thing. Stop rioting, please. You're not Antifa. To, actually, these are patriots that were harmed and are being held hostage by the American government 3 years later. Same energy between, this impeachment thing is a sham. It's a mockery. Let's actually have the court settle Trump's insurrection, like Trump's dealings. Let's have the criminal justice system deal with it. And then when the criminal justice system is dealing with it, they're like, absolutely not. That's unacceptable. How dare you? How dare you do such a thing to our beautiful boy? Okay. I guess you just don't want, a Republican to ever be prosecuted, which is ding, ding, ding. Exactly. That's the goal.
The special counsel from DOJ spoke about this issue, but I want to go back for a second to the lawyer for Trump, because in this soundbite here, he talks about the idea that the notion of criminal immunity not existing is a shocking holding. They are standing tall and saying, look, there has got to be some level of immunity, because they're talking about President Biden and other people. Listen to this.
To authorize the prosecution of a president for his official acts would open a Pandora's box from which this nation may never recover. Could George W. Bush be prosecuted for obstruction of an official proceeding for allegedly giving false information?
Oh my God, I can only get so hard. It's like inappropriate if I keep listening to this. I might nut on camera. Oh my God. Oh God, dude, don't do it. Don't threaten me with a good time, King. Don't do it.
To Congress to induce the nation to go to war in Iraq under false pretenses? Could President Obama be potentially charged with murder for allegedly authorizing drone strikes targeting U.S. citizens located abroad?
That's the political question that Trump was raising, and we played that clip earlier, about the threat, so to speak, and what would happen next. That's the heart of the matter. If you open this sort of Pandora's box politically, Trump will suggest, well, then everyone is fair game.
But the argument that James Pierce made as a rebuttal to that was, if you do go by what the prosecution or what the defendants or the Trump's attorneys are saying, that then it would open up presidents to being able to commit a whole host of criminal acts and to get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Both sides have this slippery slope argument that they're putting forward. But I think an important argument from the Jack Smith side was speaking about history here. There's a whole lot of talk.
Okay. What do you mean slippery slope? No, the Republican argument here, the Trump attorney argument, is a slippery slope argument. The other argument is not a slippery slope argument. It's an application of the law. And also, one is talking about stopping an active prosecution from, or an active criminal prosecution from continuing. The other is fantasizing about potential crimes. The other is fantasizing about potential crimes that previous presidents could be convicted of now. On that, if you consider that to be a slippery slope, then yes, every application of the law is technically being thought about on the basis of like who it applies to, and that's always going to be a slippery slope. I think it's ridiculous to be like, oh, both sides' arguments are, should presidents be above the law? Okay. And one is saying like, well, what about all the other stuff that presidents have done at the behest of like the American government and like American foreign policy and the continuation of like America's interests globally? Should they be prosecuted for that? And the other side is saying, if we don't prosecute presidents for doing stuff that's not at the behest of like American foreign policy, but only on their own, for their own personal gain, like what Trump did, and we don't prosecute them for that, then presidents can do whatever they want. And the real standard not being talked about here is whether or not something is being advanced for American global interest. You can do whatever you want as long as you are doing it under the umbrella of advancing America's foreign policy interests or America's interests in general. But the moment that you flip that script over to selfishly trying to preserve your own power, all of a sudden, you can't make that argument. That's basically it. If there was oil, for example, that Donald Trump could have, found by somehow ensuring the continuation of his presidency, then it would be fine. But there is no oil to be found in the continuation of a second Trump presidency.
Of what's happened in the past and the example of President Nixon, right? President Nixon engaged in his conduct, and what did he do? He accepted a pardon, right? He talked about we have the Iran-Contra investigation, right? And Ronald Reagan, no one there thought that he could not be prosecuted. So I think the slippery slope argument, I think there's something there on both sides. But importantly, that is the nature of all prosecutions. We've both been prosecutors. For our system to work effectively, you have to have prosecutors that are acting with a sense of justice, that are using discretion appropriately, and that is true in every scenario, for everyday Americans and for former presidents. So that faith in our system, we have to have that for our system to make sense, no matter who the defendant is. So I don't think it's an especially strong argument to say someone could abuse this. We have courts that will review indictments. We have standards of burdens of proof of reasonable doubt. You have to do a trial. So we have other fail-safes. That's not just a rogue prosecutor can go after a former president without any recourse. So I do think, Jack.
First of all, but they should, and that would be sick. I'm a fan of that in general. It would not be a rogue prosecutor. It would be someone who's, considering the extrajudicious killing of an American citizen to be illegal. I think there's a decent standard to apply. Okay? Yes, in the famous words of Noam Chomsky, you could prosecute every president.
Jack Smith's side had the better of the argument there when it comes to the slippery slopes.
There was this huge moment, and I mean, maybe some people might have lost it because when I hear the words ministerial or discretionary, I was probably like, just say what everyone's thinking, official or unofficial acts, whether a president can do it or they can't do it. That's important because the crux of this matter is going to come down to whether his actions around January 6th and leading up to it were officially presidential actions. They were talking about it in the form of ministerial versus discretionary, and they talked about this thing called the take care clause, which essentially...
Okay, this person keeps talking about colonialism over and over again. Colonialism is still colonialism. Russia did it. America did it. Same difference. The USSR did not need to invade them because they were already colonial entities. The Russian Revolution just replaced Moscow and Petersburg elite and installed communist leaders in the colonies. One of the major problems within the USSR was the Russification that was conducted, for sure, 100%. Okay? There is still a difference here. Okay? There's still a difference between going to completely separate other countries, random, irrelevant countries, and taking over that land through violence, and then maintaining dominance over them at the behest of simply stealing their natural resources and enslaving their local population. The difference there, and there is more truth to the Polish conversation here than the other places that you're pointing to, but there is a difference between America going into Iran, or America conducting a coup in Iran, or America going and invading Iraq, Afghanistan, America bombing Libya, with the actions of the USSR as what would be considered internal domestic affairs. They're still wrong. There's still plenty of mistakes. Okay? But the idea is still very different. You're talking about like you're taking for granted, I guess, all of the settler colonial violence that had taken place already, and taking that for granted and saying, well, that's in the past. Let's look at that right now. Let's look at the violent actions that are being conducted, the violent actions that are taking place here. Okay? Immediately following the revolution in the various Soviet republics were actually supported in nationalism, and their central committees were made up of the national identities of each republic. Stalin squashed this because he was a monster, but after he died, they brought it back. Russification lasted roughly 30 to 40 years in a brief period, in the abbreviated periods. Okay, but that's a very long period of time. And also, there's a lot of people moving. There's a lot of populations moving around in that time frame. And it doesn't matter. The impact of that is still not great. So, I guess, I don't know. I don't know how we got here. I mean, we were talking about America's war crimes and how every president, we started off talking about Trump's crimes that should be prosecuted. And then we moved on to how every American president could be prosecuted for war crimes. And then we moved away from that to what about all the other countries that have done crimes as well? And I just got completely stuck. And I guess it's yet another great example, okay, as to why it should not be said at all. And now, beyond what I've already said about the USSR's many mistakes, there are still people who are stuck on stop glorifying USSR to make a point then. There is no point in time where I said forced deportations was appropriate. There's no point in time where I said that like a forcible suppression of countries that wanted to, even if it was reactionary, wanted to gain autonomy away or wanted to maintain some level of independence, squashing that violently was appropriate. I never said any of those things, right? But you're basically saying that because you don't, I guess, want to have a conversation about America somehow, and you think the USSR is a good place to talk about. My point was that America's crimes are egregious. Does America still have, you know, some positives to point to? Of course, that's why I choose to live here, right? I mean, I take advantage of the bounties of imperialism. I live in the imperial core, and it's just like, unfortunately, it unfortunately always just like is, I think, directed with a real reason. The whole, what do you think about? I'm with you. However, you say the USSR's mistakes and the US's crimes quite a difference. Yes, I do. Because I don't consider like the Dust Bowl to be a crime. Okay? I consider that to be a mistake. Just like, even though technically you could make the argument that like global famine under abundance, okay, under a global capitalist organization of the economy, we have an abundance of food supply, and yet still 9 million to 14 million people die every year due to diseases related to famine. And directly a consequence of famine. That's before we get into imperialism, right? Now, do I say that that's a crime? I don't. Because that is a byproduct of the system, okay? The difference, however, is that when you are pro-capitalist and anti-communist, you look at mismanagement of resources under communism as a direct crime against the ideology, and yet every death due to famine, in a concept where we already have, in a global system where we already have an abundance of food production, you consider that to be a byproduct of personal responsibility and the failure of personal responsibility. Sorry, child growing up in Indonesia or anywhere else, that you, if you die to famine or famine-related diseases, sorry, child in Yemen. You didn't pick up yourself from your bootstraps. You just didn't do that. Should have tried harder. Okay? Stalin is as communist as I'm a giant sentient muffin. That's also cope, man. That's cope. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sure it's, yes, Stalin didn't Stalin didn't create maximum anarcho-communism or whatever you believe communism is. It's crazy. No, these are all attempts and failures, okay? But like it's maximum copium to just be like, no, that's not real communism. It's not. Of course it's not. But you can't just like shoo away because it doesn't fall in your neat designation. You can't just like push it away. In the same way that I used to do it for optics reasons, in my opinion. Like, I used to do this as well. Like, the idea that, like, oh, this is not real communism. Yeah, of course it's not. That doesn't mean it was not, like, an attempt at a transitional socialist state. Okay, why do we believe another attempt won't fail like the USSR others? Well, the reason why is because there are inevitable, inherent contradictions built into the class structure within capitalism. And capitalism, if without any sort of outside intervention, is destined to implode due to those contradictions. Okay, so it's not so much that socialism is like forcibly being brought about, but it's an understandable and necessary evolution from capitalism. This is what I believe in. I believe that yes, for a time and place, capitalism is very good. I believe that capitalism has also outlived its usefulness. However, those in positions of power do everything it can to maintain it for as long as they can. This does not mean that attempts at changing that structure will lead to, death in the future as well. I'm sure there will be possible to change the entire way that the economy is organized without people dying. People die every day, all the time. It's just that they will point to what I have to say here and go, look, he's violent. It's just like violence is an inevitability under every political structure, and violence certainly exists under capitalism. All I am saying is that social democracy under a capitalist organization of the economy inevitably goes back to barbarism, fascism, and we've seen this happen, especially so in the last 30, 40 years in all of the global north, specifically in Western nations. We saw it happen. We're watching it unfold in places like Canada. We're seeing it in Europe. We saw it in the UK. America was already always a proto-capitalist country before capitalism, before the Industrial Revolution. It was so perfect for capitalism. It was the most capitalist nation on the planet. Why is communism in Turkey so unpopular? Cold War. Turkey is America's lapdog.
We're covering.
Donald Trump sounds off after immunity hearing. This is the real threat to democracy. Capitalism was tried and failed many times in city-states across Europe for hundreds of years, but capitalism was an inevitability, and the internal contradictions of feudalism gave birth to it. Socialism is just as inevitable and necessary as capitalism is. It is a line of human development like Marxism 101. Yeah. Also, the notion that capitalism currently doesn't fail is pretty funny, but I guess, like, what are your metrics for success in that circumstance? Because the same exact dynamic that I mentioned, like famine. If we have famine under abundance, in my opinion, that's a failure. If we have famine when there's no abundance, when famine is commonplace, that is still a failure, but is nowhere near as big a failure that you can attribute to the systems. That's the way I see it. When your only frame of reference is the middle-class suburb in the United States, I'm sure it can seem like it's only successful. Yes, because nobody associates African nations that have been ravaged by American forces, by Western imperialism, to be another beautiful byproduct of capitalist nation states. Nobody ever thinks about fucking any of the other. Nobody thinks about Rwanda or Congo or any of these other countries as like capitalist nations. It's just America. That's the only country that's capitalist. But then again, Americans have horse blinders anyway. They don't even think social democracy exists. So it's stupid. It's stupid to have these conversations. You know what's not a stupid conversation to have, though? Trump talking about his immunity hearing.
Covering all of it. When the president steps up and look at that, here he is. Okay. The former president talking today about being in court. Let's listen in even before he starts as they do the setup here.
Sitting president has decided to prosecute his major opponent who's leading in all the polls in the country. The issues that the court had to deal with today were momentous. Whether or not a president of the United States could be prosecuted for carrying out his responsibilities, doing his...
I love the framing of, like, you know, doing an insurrection is the literal responsibility of the president. Like, Your Honor, I'm sorry, he had to do it to him. He had to do it to him for the one time. You don't get it.
His job as president. We can't have a country where every 4 years there's a cycle of political recrimination, where one administration attacks a prior administration when in fact that candidate is leading in the polls and will be the next president of the United States. As our legal team, as our appellate team made clear, that would be a disaster for our country. That would be a direct attack on democracy, and that cannot happen. What was very significant today, and I'm sure you all caught it, is the special counsel conceded that if it was President Obama who was being prosecuted for a drone strike, then they'd have to consider immunity. But when it's not, when it's President Trump, then they're taking the position that there's no immunity for President.
Yeah, first of all, this is such a funny take because Donald Trump also literally, I think, killed a direct relative of the person that Obama killed, the American citizen that Obama extrajudiciously killed. Donald Trump also facilitated in a raid which ended up killing that person's sister. So the idea that, like, oh, this is a specifically Barack Obama thing is so silly. Why is it silly? Because clearly you're not up there for that reason. You killed an American citizen extrajudiciously as well, literally directly related to the person that Barack Obama had killed prior. Okay? Ain't nobody's making a big stink out of that, dog. You want to know why? Because that's America, baby. That's America enforcing its might around the globe. And that's precisely the reason why nobody cares about that. Nobody is going to prosecute for that. They should. In a just world, you should be prosecuted for that. The difference is they're prosecuting you for an insurrection, okay? You didn't do that for the continuation of American hegemony. You did that for the continuation of your own power. And that you can't really do, right? That's it. Also, the other dude he had killed with the marshals, even that doesn't count. Even that is not considered to be inappropriate because that's like, you know, that's still the president sending the marshals, like utilizing the actual the actual existing power structures against a criminal who has already given up their rights. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty. But if you're a socialist or if you're a leftist or whatever, and you killed a fascist, then you know you're no longer innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until they kill you, and then you're extra guilty. So, you know, that's something to consider. That is not up for contention on this day. Okay, your crimes today are of the top of the hour variety, okay? Forgetting to run the top of the hour variety. The biggest crime of all time, because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. If I were to forget that, even though apparently 35% of Twitch's staff has been laid off today, I would lose my job. I wouldn't, but I'd be void of my contract. But if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get 1 free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. Hey, Hasan, did you know 30 billion% of the Twitch staff was laid off?
Presidential acts that were required when a president is carrying out his job responsibilities. If we adopt what the special counsel wants, if we adopt what President Biden wants, then we open the Pandora's box.
Leftists would greatly benefit from divorcing socialism and communism from Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism, and Marxism. Stop. Okay. No. You heard that, Kaya? That's a dumbass. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Thank you, man. No. Leftists should be divorced. So what is supposed to be leftism then? What do you mean, here we go? This is a bit, right? There's no way this is real. Bro, why don't you make your own thing then? I don't understand. What is it supposed to be? Like, I've heard Stalin and Mao before, right? I have heard Stalin and Mao before. But like, once you put Lenin in there, you're broaching, you know, libertarian socialist territory, which is already on tricky ground. I've never heard someone also say Marxism before, though. That was new. Like, Noam Chomsky will also be like, oh, I'm an anarchist. Like, yeah, Lenin, he was bad. Whatever. Okay, go hang out with Jeffrey Epstein. Whatever, right? But, like, I've never heard someone also say Marxism should be removed from Leftism. Then what is it then? What is it?
To political prosecution after political prosecution after political prosecution. In fact, Joe Biden could be prosecuted for trying to stop this man from becoming the next president of the United States. We don't need political prosecutions. We need political process. I'd like to introduce President Trump.
Well, I want to thank you all, and we had I thought, very momentous day in terms of what was learned and what they've conceded. They conceded two major points that were they were right in doing it. I don't think they had much of a choice, but they're very, very big, very powerful points. And I think we're doing very well. I think it's very unfair when a political opponent, is prosecuted by the DOJ, by Biden's DOJ. So they're losing in every poll. They're losing in almost every demographic. Numbers came out today that are really very mind-boggling if you happen to be Joe Biden. And I think they feel this is the way they're going to try and win. And that's not the way it goes. That'll be bedlam in the country. It's a very bad thing. It's a very bad precedent. As we said, it's the opening of a Pandora's box, and that's a very sad thing that's happened with this whole situation. When they talk about threat to democracy, that's your real threat to democracy. And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple. And if you don't, as an example...
It's simple. It's so simple, dude. As president, they should let you do it. I don't understand. It's that simple. It's sick, man. That's awesome. Come on. You're opening up the Pandora's box. So, like, okay. So what if Biden also maintains that same immunity and does an insurrection after losing the election? But this time, he just continues being the president. How would that work then? What if Biden currently, utilizing his presidential immunity, sent a hit squad to execute you? He's got immunity, right? You can't charge him for that. Let's think about this for a second. Yeah, why doesn't Biden just send out an assassination squad right now to wherever Trump is and kill him? He can drone strike you. He's got presidential immunity. You can't do a crime when you're the president. And you want this man to be president? Wait, where did this come from? I've never been like, I hope Trump becomes president. I'm so confused. Biden isn't going after him. And also, he literally ran on Lock Her Up. Yes, he's saying Biden's DOJ is going after him. That's it.
Example, if this case were lost on immunity and I did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. I'm working for the country. And I worked on very hard on voter fraud because we have to have free elections. We have to have strong borders. We have to have free elections. Those two things almost above all. And we found tremendous voter fraud. We have a list of it. We have some findings if you want it. The press doesn't like reporting it, but we found tremendous voter fraud, determinative voter fraud. But we worked on that. That's what I was doing. And they were talking about after. Well, nothing has to do with after I left. It was during the time. And that was what they really focused on today during the appeal. And they concede that, and everybody concedes that. And if it's during the time, you have absolute immunity. So we'll see how it all works out. We have a great argument. We have an argument with, they conceded two major points today. In fact, I think it's probably a concession you have to have.
Well, what do you mean? Where does this come from, dude? You joke about loving Trump all the time, of course, and brain-dead liberal haters are going to see clips of that and think you're a hog lover. No, because liberals love, like, getting the respect of Republicans. That's the thing. Like, so if they genuinely did think I was a Republican, they wouldn't despise me as much. They would actually come in here to try and, like, convert me. Liberals are, like, constantly in a I can fix him paradigm with some of the dumbest, most reactionary losers on the planet. So if they did truly think I was a conservative, they would be trying to win me over. Liberals will spend so much more time trying to convert conservatives to vote for the Democratic Party than actually get their politicians to at least capitulate a little bit to, like, good policies that a broader leftist coalition would also benefit from, themselves included. So technically, if I was someone that they considered to be a conservative Trump lover, they would actually come in here and tell me, like, Hasan, you're such a good guy. You're such a good idea. I feel like we agree on a lot, but why do you want to vote for Trump? You should vote for Joe Biden instead. They wouldn't come in here with the same level of disdain that they currently have. Disdain that they only have for the left. That's who they hate more.
Ask the lawyers, Todd, if you'd like to talk about it. But they conceded 2 points that I think were, by normal standards, if it weren't me, that would be the end of this case. But sometimes they look at me differently than they look upon others, and that's very bad for our country. You had a very big event yesterday, as you saw, in Georgia, where the district attorney is totally compromised. The case has to be dropped. They went after, I guess, 18 or 20 people. They wanted to go after a lot of other people. They wanted to go after senators. She was out of her mind. Now it turns out that that case is totally compromised. In fact, they say she's in far more criminal liability than any of them.
That's what they're saying. So I want to talk about what is... I've been meaning to cover this can monarchs commit crime thing. Because, like, we're not done with the Trump stuff.
The people she's looking at. So
and
I think
we still have Matt Pat.
Look at what happened where they pay a lawyer with absolutely no experience $700,000 who happens to be her lover or her boyfriend. And then they go on trips and vacations together, very expensive vacations together. And the reason they paid him so much because he was after me. Because this way they can afford to pay him a lot more. It probably passes certain tests. And that's a very sad thing that happened in Georgia. And I would imagine that case is going to be dropped. Every legal analyst that I've spoken to, every legal analyst that I've read have said that case is so compromised now it has to be dropped. Very good people were very badly hurt by that case. It's a shame. Very good people. People did nothing wrong. They did nothing different than what Democrats have been doing for years and years and years, whether it's slates or anything else that you're talking about. But they were very hurt, and it turns out that she profited tremendously in that case. It's illegal. What she did is illegal. So we'll let the state handle that. But what a sad situation it is. I want to thank everybody for the fairness. We've been covered very fairly. Most people agree that we're entitled as a president to immunity. If you didn't have immunity, as an example, Joe Biden with the prosecutor, we're not going to give you $1 billion unless you get rid of the prosecutor that's after the company or his son or whoever it is they're after. But he wanted that prosecutor gone, and he's on tape saying it. Or you could say the horrible job he's done at the border where our country is being destroyed, or the horrible situation that took place. The lowest moment, I think, in the history of our country was Afghanistan, the way we withdrew. Not that we withdrew, but the way we withdrew. With shame, we surrendered. People killed, 13 great soldiers killed, many unbelievably, horrifically hurt, wounded, hurt. And hundreds of people died on both sides. Hundreds of people died. He could be prosecuted for that. So you can't have a president without immunity. You have to have, as a president, you have to be able to do your job. But if this didn't work out, if I wasn't given immunity, then other presidents, when we talked about today, President Obama with the drones.
I like the idea that, like, he had to do an insurrection as a part of his, like, presidential duties. This is very funny to me. Like, you don't understand. Like, I had to do January 6th. because like it's just a part of my job. It's a part of, like, it's similar to how Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, which was also my idea that he followed through on, but like I would have done better, but he did it worse.
Strikes, which were very bad. They were mistakes, terrible mistakes. You can't put you really can't put a president in that position. So I think most people understand it, and we feel very confident that eventually, hopefully at this level, but eventually we win. A president has to have immunity. And the other thing is, I did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. The investigation of the election, which was a rigged election, everybody knows it. And just if you just look at, they didn't use state legislatures. They didn't. They went to the FBI, and you look at FBI and Twitter, the Twitter files with the FBI, all of the horrible things.
That's my favorite thing is like the Twitter files and the FBI. People constantly talking about Twitter files, and it's like a suppression of the truth by Twitter or whatever. None of those guys are talking. When Elon Musk just like bans people randomly for putting forward a tracker of his private jet, or banning people randomly because Bill Ackman decided that like, his wife can't take it no more, right? Like Elon Musk operating at the behest of billionaires and like, and his billionaire buddies, and just like banning whoever willy-nilly. Like, where is the Twitter files on that? Where is the free speech on that? Doesn't exist. Doesn't matter. Who was the leftist who went crazy over it? He wasn't a leftist at that point, but it's Matt Taibbi is who you're talking about. Hey, you just said the words, can monarchs commit crimes? I wanted to share a video with the name of that. Yeah, that's the whole point of why I said it, because it's right here. I do want to watch a Historia Civilis video on it, and I'm going to watch it. We're just watching this for now.
The signed documents, the lying to Congress, and the stuffing of the ballot boxes, all on tape. Stuffing of ballot boxes, all on tape. Government tape. And most of the information, as you know, we'll give you some of the findings that just came out. But all of that information, as you know, was gotten from mostly government sources, government tapes, government files, and government stats. So it's very sad when something like that happens. You know, you wouldn't have inflation, but much more importantly, you wouldn't have had the Ukraine situation with Russia. You wouldn't have had the attack on Israel.
Russia!
You'd have a much different economy right now. You'd have a great economy. And Russia! We were just 3 years ago.
Sorry.
So I want to thank everybody very much. And
I love the way he says it.
And we think we had a very good day today. The concession of these two major points was pretty amazing, and honestly, I'm very glad they did it. I think they did the right thing. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, you just used the word bedlam. Will you tell your supporters now, no matter what, no violence?
So it was very interesting to hear the president compare his situation in terms of immunity as commander-in-chief to that of Barack Obama when, back in 2015, the headline in the New York Times was, "Drone strikes reveal uncomfortable truth. U.S. is often unsure about who will die." And he called what happened.
Trump did the same thing. Shut up. Which, by the way, they should both be prosecuted for in a just world. However, this is something that's a little bit different.